Credo Voices, the podcast where we bring you inspiring stories of ordinary people doing extraordinary things. I'm your host, Awele Okibo, the CEO of Credo Advisory. If you educate a man, you educate an individual. But if you educate a woman, you educate a nation. This African proverb highlights the transformative impact of educating the girl child. Every day, girls face barriers to education caused by poverty, cultural norms and practices, poor infrastructure, and violence. According to the United Nations Children's Fund, UNICEF, 129 million girls are out of school. Ensuring that all girls and young women receive a quality education is their human right and must be a global development priority. In this episode, Credo Voices travels to my home country of Nigeria, where my guest, Carolyn Seaman, is addressing gender disparity in education and empowering young women through her organization. Her important work contributes to Sustainable Development Goal 4, Quality Education, and Goal 5, Gender Equality. This is Carolyn in her own words, sharing her story. Let's listen and be inspired. Today, I have Carolyn Seaman with us. Carolyn is doing incredible work in Nigeria, advancing the role girls have to play. She's giving them voice and she's giving them agency. Carolyn, can you please formally introduce yourself to our audience and tell us a little bit about what you're doing with Girls' Voices Initiative?
Thank you, Awele. Thank you for having me. Good day, everyone. My name is Carolyn Seaman. I'm the founder and creative director at Girls' Voices Initiative. We're a nonprofit that work with adolescent girls and young women, particularly girls aged 10 to 19-year-olds and young women 20 to 35. And our goal is to educate girls and women about their rights and empower them with skills in technology and digital media to help them advocate for their rights and amplify their voices to wide audiences, particularly policymakers, where change is most needed for girls and women.
So can you tell me, how did you become passionate about girls and women's rights?
I think my passion, would I say, that stems from my existence as an African woman. This is pretty much my reality first and foremost before being able to even create any impact. As a young girl, I grew up in northern Nigeria, even though I'm from the southern part of Nigeria. But at a very young age, at age 14 to be specific, I recall very vividly not seeing a classmate resume school in SS1. And this is a period where we're all excited to finally be seniors. We're excited about our new uniform. We finally get to wear ties. And, everybody comes to school with that excitement. And I noticed Zainab was not resumed. And I get curious and discover that Zainab got married over the holiday to her father's friend, who pretty much is the age of her father, close to 60. And she was a third wife. So at the young age of 14, I was quickly awakened to a reality of I just might be somebody's wife at this age, and that, even though of course I couldn't do anything about that at that age, but growing up, I never just got over that incident. I keep wondering whatever happened to Zainab. Did she ever get a chance to complete her education? Did she have kids? What was that reality like for her? How did she survive having co-wives? I just can't get over what life could have been for her. And unfortunately, that's pretty much the life for many average Nigerian girls, be it from the northern part of Nigeria or the southern part, and pretty much across Africa to even be specific. So, I really just got so passionate about that issue. I studied law in the university, quickly got into social impact work pretty early. So at 28, I recall already being so passionate and building specific skills in gender security studies. And the passion grew on from there. I got involved in advocating for women's political participation, increasing women's economic empowerment. And the journey just got so frustrating for me when I felt like we were doing pretty much a one step forward and 10 step backwards, because it looked like
Yes.
all of the work we were trying to do with women was a bit too late to be intervening. And that's what really inspired me at 2013 to establish Girls Voices Initiative. And at that point, it was really about catching girls young, working with them through those developmental years and helping them to find their voice, explore spaces where their voices can be heard and be actually actively engaged in the decision process, particularly that if affecting their lives in specific.
Yes. So Carolyn, you've given me a lot to unpack, and I'd like us to delve a little deeper. So
Sure.
on one side, you are now you've created an incredible space for these
Yeah.
girls from age 10 upwards to be
Yeah.
able to be in an environment where they can learn, where they can amplify their voices, where they have access to a lot of tools, survival tools as
Absolutely.
far as technology and so on. Now,
Yeah.
can we park that for a minute? You
Yeah.
mentioned that some of these decisions are made for these girls to marry. Do you do anything with the parents? Because while you may have these girls who know how to code, who are
Yeah.
leveraging social media to share their views on on the elections,
Yeah.
how do you try and translate some of that impact to the people who
Mm.
actually have agency over her?
In that space, we work at different levels, and that's just trying to give you a broad picture of how work looks like for us on a daily basis. Apart from working with girls at the grassroots level, we work at the national level. So our organization is currently the chair of the National Coalition of Civil Society on Ending Child Marriage. And within that space, we're working actively with the Technical Working Group on Ending Child Marriage in Nigeria. And this is an initiative of the African Union Campaign on Ending Child Marriage. So we're working with the Federal Ministry of Women Affairs, which is the leading agency in Nigeria on issues of ending child marriage. And we're working in that space to mobilize and coalesce civil society working in that space to start to see how we can trickle down the impact at the grassroots level. So how do we engage with community people? How do we engage with traditional and religious leaders? How do we engage with policymakers, because this is where the change is most needed. In Nigeria, for example, we're still having a long journey with even domesticating the Child's Right Act, which is literally the governing legal instrument to protect Nigerian children. And so we have an act which is operating at the federal level, but at the state level, where states are adopting and domesticating these laws, we're seeing a washed down reflection of that law, where
Yes.
age of marriage of a child, which is most critical, because this is where girls are able to even uh, be able to challenge, those marriages and challenge those illegal unions. But when you
Yes.
have a law that doesn't even provide that, you don't force a girl to marry or engage a child in any form of betrothal before the age of 18, then we have a problem, because there's no instrument with which we can challenge such illegal unions. So
And
those are the kind of spaces we're working, and then we work with the African Union Campaign on Ending Child Marriage as well. Our organization is a member of the Civil Society Organizations Reference Group. And so, even at the regional level, we're seeing how we can promote peer learning, because we have some countries that are a bit advanced that have been able to test out, some approaches. And, our cultures across Africa are pretty much similar. And so, there's some learning we can borrow and explore integrating within our own local context to see how we can effectively transform conversations at the grassroots level,
wow.
particularly influencing those who have power and influence over girls.
Wow, this is incredible. I love that you're using a multi pronged approach, engaging with decision makers, policy makers, but at the same time, you are actively working with the girls in question.
Exactly.
So, can you take us to these girls? How do you actually start with them? Do they find
Mm.
you? Do you find them? Myself, for example, if I was a 15-year
Yeah.
old girl, how do I actually become a part of Girls Voices Initiative?
Thank you. That has really been a journey for us, and that's pretty big, much because we have a very large population of girls to reach. According to data, there's an estimated 20 million adolescent girls in Nigeria, and this is just looking at ages 12 to 24 years old. That's pretty much the population of, also in some cases, even four times the population of some countries across the world. So this is such a huge population for us to reach. But for us, we are mindful of the fact that the starting point is really getting to the vulnerable girls, girls who are likely to be ignored and not targeted in regular interventions. So, for example, when we work with public schools, we'd like to prioritize public schools because that's where you find a huge population of the everyday girl who is not able to afford an excellent education in an international school, for example, in Nigeria. And that's another place where we find the famous house helps, who are often called house girls in Nigeria. These are girls who have left
Yes.
their own homes and are serving in another person's home and get an opportunity to go to school. So those are the kind of people, kinds of girls we like to target in our programming. Um, and we like to work with people we call local facilitators. You know, these are people who are on the ground in these communities and can identify the right people for us because we're not in the schools, right? So, for example, sometimes we're able to just do a session for 25 girls or 100 girls. We work with guidance and counseling teachers in schools. We work with STEM teachers when we're doing STEM programs. So they are able to help us identify the girls who most need this impact, girls who are
Yeah.
usually not picked for competitions in school and all of those other opportunities. So those are the kind of girls we like to target in our programming. And when we work with them, we like to create really safe spaces where they can feel their voices are heard, where they can feel like they co-own the space. Even when we're doing programs with them, we have girls who we consider to be like ambassadors, who are girls who have also gone through our programs, who are able to co-facilitate with us. So girls feel like this is something they can learn, not only learn from, but also be and also inspire change in their own creative ways moving forward. So that's pretty much how we like to engage. And in situations where, like I mentioned, where we have to deal with huge populations. So I remember when we were starting off our program on educating girls about their rights. When we did a training for the girls, we were only able to reach 100 girls in class that went through the full training process. But we worked with the girls to develop what we called an instructional video. So the girls stepped down the laws they had learned into a video that we were able to now screen to wider audiences and just facilitate conversations, which was really powerful because that way we were now able to reach girls in their thousands. We'll just screen those instructional videos in schools and just have very open and safe conversation with girls. And that's where we had a lot of reports about all sorts of gender based violations that girls had been quiet about and had been um,
Wow.
ignorant about what to do with it, and we were able to
Yes.
connect them to helpful sources. Those who want to take them up in law, we connect them to where they can get pro bono legal services. Girls who need to be able to check their health, we provided them with access to where they can do that. So basically, being able to create that bridge where girls have access to information and are actively engaged in the process of spreading that knowledge.
Right now, how many girls are currently enrolled in your program?
Right now, we have We have different programs going on. So, for example, we just concluded a social impact film project where we've been able to reach over 500 young women across Nigeria. So, the last cohort, we had 50 women who just graduated from their film training and have produced their films and screened them in communities. For our STEM programs, we've been able to train over 1,000 girls now. We're just concluding a cohort of 50, and we'll be starting off another 50 in the new term.
These are impressive numbers,
Yeah.
just given, how young your organization is. Now,
So,
just to talk about the STEAM program, this
yeah.
is where you're leveraging technology and helping,
Yes.
girls to
Yes.
empower themselves. When they graduate with these incredible skills,
Yeah.
can you share with us, what next? Are you able to connect them perhaps with, job opportunities
Yeah.
or, going on to schools? What do they end up doing with it when they leave?
So we have different ways we're challenging girls to be actively engaged in the process. So, for example, if we look at since when Girls Voices was established in 2013, for our girls' rights education program, for example, we've currently reached over 800,000 girls across Nigeria and even some West African countries, because we've just also launched an outreach to girls across a couple of countries in West and Central Africa. So, but when we start out with girls, we're very, very basic with them. We don't want to overwhelm them. Our ask is just try to step this learning to at least 2 to 3 girls in your community. And we've had stories and testimonials of girls who have gone way beyond our expectations. For example, a young girl that we trained in our STEM program, she went through the coding boot camp, and her team successfully won the hackathon training, and she had a computer as part of her win. All the team members won computer laptops. And this young girl took her laptop back home, and over Christmas holiday, she trained girls in her village. She gathered together young girls in her village and taught them coding. And I was so blown away because we didn't even have that kind of imagination of girls being creative about how they step down their learning within their communities. So that was such a powerful one. So we're working with a very interesting age group, right? Their lives are literally on the go. They're at school. It's from secondary school to the university. So a lot of the girls we started out with in 2013 are just graduating now. One of them literally went back to her school in the FCT here in one of the suburbs, Yaya, and she pulled together girls in her school and celebrated the International Day of the Girl. Literally inspired by the summit we had with her back in 2016. It was literally such an awesome moment because we didn't even imagine that she's going on to set up her own foundation now, literally inspired from us. And so we really don't try to box them into specific things to do. We just inspire them to dream big. And we always tell them that we're here as a support system to guide them and see them through. She has been coming now and requesting how she can set up her foundation and continue the great work as inspired by us. And those are literally, for me, the ways we can continue to not only give girls agency, but create that support system that sees them through until they are strong enough to also start to grow that impact in their communities. And that's pretty much what we're trying to do. We're also working on setting up a proper employment skills training for girls. Because we're now mindful that many of them are graduating from the university and will be looking to the labor market now. We want to also still be able to provide that support system that gives them basic skills that prepare them for the labor market.
Carolyn's work in Nigeria is transforming the lives of young women. She has been intentional about catching them young, but also engaging with policymakers to institutionalize change. But how does this translate to the real world? Carolyn shares insights about how they prepare the girls with skills to thrive in the job market and how they leverage technology to help them scale.
I feel like digital skills are they're like a prerequisite for existence in today's world. You know, we had the luxury of choosing to have those skills or not in the past, but you literally don't have the luxury anymore. These are skills that help you not just survive everyday life, but also get way ahead in terms of being at the forefront of innovating ideas, innovating solutions to everyday problems. And we feel like it's important to empower girls and women with those skills so that they get positioned properly in a space where they can be not just agents who are thriving in that ecosystem, but being able to even be leaders, you know, in that space. And that's why tech is really, really important for us. Tech and digital media are our core skills because we feel like they are 21st century skills that can no longer be avoided. Even when you look at media as well. Everybody is on their phone making videos today. Some job employment will require you to provide a video CV today, you know. So we're literally getting into a space where these are no longer luxury skills, but actual prerequisites that everyone expects you to have. And it's important for us to make sure that girls are not left behind in that space. So when you look, for example, at even in the Nigerian context, the examinations that students have to take when they are transiting from secondary schools to college is a computer-based test. It literally was made a computer-based test a little over a decade ago. Unfortunately, we still have a lot of girls who are graduating from
Yes.
the high schools without ever touching a computer. And so many of them are failing these examinations, not because they are dull heads or they don't know anything, but because they literally can't use the tool that helps them to actually uh, even feed in their answers to these examinations. So those are some of the things that are so passionate for us that we want to make sure that girls don't continue to fall on the wayside in
Yes.
these spaces.
So, given the scale of all of these initiatives that you're implementing, I would imagine you've
Yeah.
come across so many roadblocks and challenges. Carolyn,
Yeah.
can you just
Yeah.
walk me through some of them and how have you been able to overcome
Ooh, our challenges are they are quite a
them?
number.
Where to
First
begin?
and foremost, I think the famous one, which is something that we still have to deal with every day, is why only girls. Right. So when we go to schools and we're telling people, oh, we're going to do a STEM program, unfortunately, we would only want to take girls. People keep accosting us. The school administrators will say, why only girls? Why only girls? Why only girls? And we always have to explain. We're not disputing the fact that boys also need this level of interventions, but we're working with the data that has shown extensively how huge the gap is when it comes to women versus men and boys versus girls. And for us, we feel like a lot needs to happen to at least uh, bridge that gap before we start to say, oh, we're looking at creating the balance. So basically, how do we achieve equity, you know, before we start to push for equality, you know?
Yes.
And so that's why we have to always deal with that issue of why girls, why girls, why girls. Another issue another challenge we have faced is also the issue of funding. And this is not something that is peculiar to only us. This is literally a usual song within civil society organizations in general.
Yes. Yes.
And it's peculiar for us because we're looking at number of girls that need to be reached versus the funds you have, you know, available to create that impact per time. So this is a constant challenge we're having to navigate, and we're learning every passing day how to improve our fundraising channels and how to better articulate the need, you know, to donors. so that we can continue to boost that reach. And that's been helpful. I think for us, we are particularly grateful for opportunities to be able to engage at the regional level and on the international scene as well. So constantly, our work is being brought to wider audiences of donors, and we're getting increasing interest in supporting the work that we're doing. So that we're very grateful for, and we want to continue learning and improving in that space. Another challenge we have faced, which is one that really was quite a very learning experience for us recently, was with our social impact fund project Girl Nation. So we were implementing the program in Kano. Kano State is one of the states in northern Nigeria, and we had to work with university students. So basically, there are no girls beyond 17, years of age at that space, and 17 will be girls who really got into school pretty early, you know. And here was a university administration telling us that we couldn't engage those girls without written consent from their parents or spouses. Because Kano State it had not signed the Child's Rights Act at the time. It was such a huge challenge. It was We came as close to almost giving up and choosing a different state to engage. But we just chose to be resilient and fight, because for me, it also was a learning moment to realize that these are really the vulnerable girls we need to reach. If we don't stay
Yes,
true to fight for them,
yes.
then who fights for them?
Who will?
Um, we all know that if you were to say their husbands were to give a written notice, then no girls will turn up, in your program. A number of them were threatened by even their peers, boys within their schools who told them if they participated in that program, they were going to be excommunicated from the school associations and all whatnot. But we stayed through. The girls were trained, they produced their short films, and when we screened them in the communities, we started with their school, and it was such a learning moment. The deputy vice chancellor was present and literally almost cried watching one of the films, and openly confessed that they really tried to frustrate the project because they didn't understand it. But they are so excited to see that their girls have built these skills, and even ended up offering the girls an opportunity to produce a documentary for the school, which was really so
Oh,
funny.
Carolyn.
I
Oh,
know.
that
It
is
was really so
phenomenal.
funny coming from the background to that. It was such a learning and really empowering moment, not only for the girls, but even for us. Because so many times, as leaders, we also get so caught up in this moment, we forget that we also need to be filled up and nourished all over again, because we really do go through some of these challenging situations.
Yes, but this is how change happens.
Yeah.
This is how we move society forward, one element of impact at a time.
True.
So,
True.
Carolyn, what are your plans for Girls Voices? Where will we see you in a year? What are you doing? Are you moving to other countries? Are you expanding to other cities? Share a little bit about where you see yourself in a year.
So first and foremost, like I mentioned, we launched our girls' rights movement program across West and Central Africa. So we're working currently with 10 countries across the region, and our strategy with that is realizing that West and Central Africa unfortunately has the highest indices of literally almost all of the challenges facing girls and women currently now. So when you look at child marriage, FGM, gender-based violence, West and Central Africa continues to have the highest indices across the continent. And so for us, we feel like it's pivotal at this point to target and build the girls' rights movement across the region. So we begin to be deliberate and intentional about establishing girl leaders. And so within a year, I see those girls beginning to take on spaces, decision making spaces where we really want to hear their voices loud and clear. So, for example, we're looking at spaces within the African Union, spaces within the CSW, spaces within the GMAC, spaces where decisions are being taken that affect adolescent girls and women.
Yes.
And we want to make sure that girls from West and Central Africa are speaking about their peculiar issues and making clear recommendations to policymakers around how they can address those challenges. Because we feel like girls on the region have been too quiet, which we don't have the luxury of considering the indices that we're seeing on the region. And so we're hoping that with this project, we can project the voices of girls in those spaces. Another place is with our social impact film project. So we launched the Women's International Film Festival Nigeria, acronymed WIFIN. We launched it last year in Nigeria, and it was such a huge and successful launch with over 3,000 film submissions from over 130 countries. That was such a learning moment for us. We never in a thousand ages imagined that women filmmakers were looking for such a creative space like that. And we're proud to be able to create that space in Nigeria. Our next festival is in March next year, 2024. We usually hold it around the International Women's Day. And so we're hoping to see a stronger presence of women filmmakers from around the world. Last year it was a bit tricky because the COVID restrictions were still there. Many people couldn't travel, but we're hoping to see a lot of international filmmakers coming because we want to be able to foster that learning exchange between creatives in Nigeria and around the world. So that we can foster learning and build a very strong community for women creatives in Nigeria as well.
Carolyn, thank you. Thank you so much. We cannot begin to solve Africa's developmental challenges
Yeah.
unless women are empowered. With
Yes,
with
indeed.
us, we talk of indices, with us being about half of the population, women need agency. They need to economic
True.
empowerment. They need to
True.
be decision makers. They need to have rights over themselves and their loved
Absolutely.
ones. So thank you for being part of these change agents that are trying to
Thank you
do
so
that,
much.
trying to achieve that. Thank you for joining us. If you
You
have just
too for
one
having
message, one call to message to our listeners on
me.
on on, on what you're doing and what people can do, please share it now.
I'll just like to restate one of our very strong beliefs that girls are a force for change on the planet. And so we can't ignore girls. We can't underscore the importance of girls in global development. And so my big ask is to everyone to look around them, look around for any girl, any adolescent girl, any woman that you can support in your own little way. Not necessarily because you're related to them, but because it could be your sister, it could be your mom, it could be your aunt, it could be your grandma, it could be somebody related to you. So you don't have to wait for that blood relation. Just reach out and help and create that ripple effect of change in your own little way. And together we can make the world a better place for women and girls. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Carolyn. I wish you all the best, and we'll check in on
Thank you
you
so
very
much.
soon.
Thank you so much for having me.
Closing gender gaps in education is not just about meeting a specific SDG target. It's a pivotal step towards creating a more inclusive and equitable world. Carolyn embodies the spirit of change. Her commitment extends beyond numbers. It's about empowering lives, fostering agency, and creating opportunities for countless young women. As we applaud the progress made, it's essential to recognize that this journey is a long and formidable one. It's an ongoing commitment that manifests in the choices we make, the conversations we start, and the actions we take. Let's join hands in this continuous effort embracing education as a catalyst for gender equality, and acknowledging its profound impact on shaping a sustainable world. Credo Voices, ordinary people doing extraordinary things. Thank you for listening. Until next time, stay curious and keep believing in the power of your voice. This is Awele Okibo, signing off for Credo Voices.